Hello to the viewers of my very inconsistent uploads on this channel. It's nearing Halloween and my girlfriend's birthday is on the 31st, so I've been painting up a pumpkin 3D print for her. It's began as a lump of kind of grim looking off-white resin, and I've managed to paint it up into something that looks at least redeemable. I'm painting with Vallejo here, but I'll pop up some Citadel paints that should be able to colour match for you as well. I have this base that I didn't really like the effects I'd sort of managed to get on it, so I've used some Vallejo snow effects to just cover the whole thing and give it some new texture over the top. Just using a little modelling tool and scrubbing it down until it looks vaguely like a muddy field type thing. Obviously it's white, but that's going to get fixed later. And then obviously I stuck the pumpkin on straight afterwards, using the snow effects to stick it down, as it's got a pretty hefty stick on it. A pretty obvious stage here, black priming the model. I've got an airbrush, so I just ran some black primer through an airbrush to get it all with a nice base coat on. Obviously, if you've got a spray can, use that. But black priming it is a pretty key stage. You should do it before you do any mini. The next easy step, obviously, just paint the pumpkin orange. It's the colour pumpkins are. I've got an airbrush, so I used an airbrush. You can do it with a brush. Just get the big circle orange. The next step, once you've got this guy fully orange, is just run a wash or an ink, sepia sort of colour. I'm using raw umber from Liquitex, but I'm sure sepia or Agrax Earthshade from Citadel would just do the exact same thing. I'm running it through an airbrush. Once again, you could do it through a brush. Airbrush is just a bit quicker. Step number 3, once the wash/ink has dried, is just paint the stalk green. Again, you can do it with a brush. It just gives a bit of a better effect with the airbrush, as it's more gradual and a built-in increase of colour from the base to the top. But with a brush, I'm sure you get the same effect. It might take a bit of time and a bit of work just to make it perfect for yourself, though. Not sure why I did the dry brushing stage after I did the stalk, but again, just come back in with the orange and dry brush it all across the pumpkin, and it really just brings out the lightness of the pumpkin's exterior and leaves the recesses the darker Agrax Earthshady inky brown thing shade that we've done beforehand in the earlier steps. And then as this 3D print has some tentacly bits that look like vines coming out the sides, I'm painting that with the same dark green that I did the stalk with. So I'll run this all over the vines and the other mini pumpkin stalks that are in the sort of underneath it, if you can see it. And then, because I am a complete idiot, I forgot to film myself doing the base texture here. It's just a bit of AK muddy ground with some Vallejo water effects over the top to make it look like wet ground. The next step after this is, of course, the eye of the pumpkin, the weird little creature thing. I'm just using deck tan to paint the little sphere on top of it. This isn't really a complex step, it's just paint it white, really. To make the eye a bit more creepy, I wanted to give it a bit more of a human look. So I painted the iris blue. This is just with a sort of dark turquoisey blue. The hard part here was painting the circle. It's horrible freehand painting a circle because it never looks right, but I'm sure it looks right to everyone but the artist is essentially the problem I think everyone has there. The steps after this were just to take a bit of a lighter blue to give the, I don't even know what to call them, like the weird little line bits in the middle of an eye, just to make it less of a flat colour and give it some depth. So I added some light colours on the interior, and later on I'll add some dark colours on the exterior. Obviously, as you can see in the video there, I am painting the pupil of the eye black. It's black. You don't really need an explanation of how to do that. I did make a bit of a mistake, but I corrected that with the blue again. And then once I moved on, I just added a bit more of the blue to add the lines in again. I don't even know what you'd call them, to be honest, but this adds depth to the eye. And obviously here, I'm using the darker blue on the outside just to give some transference of colour and make it all bring into the middle. And then after I did that, to give the pupil a bit of a highlight, I added a very, very dark grey just to give a highlight right on the top of the eye there. And then underneath this pumpkin, there's what I assume to be sort of a tree trunk type thing. So I've just painted this a dark brown. There's not much more to say about that. Just paint it whatever woody colour you want if you're using the same miniature as me. Next step here is where I really began adding depth to the eye, adding some bloodshotness to it, which surprisingly went quite well considering how fine you have to be with them. But you just jitter your hand around and it makes it look a little bit, well, bloodshot. I didn't really know what to do for the mouth and eyes here. I thought about doing OSL, but I didn't think it would work, so I've just used the umber ink again, just to fill it out and make it nice and dark. I might have been able to do it black, but I felt that the ink was a bit of a safer choice there. and it turned out pretty well, I think. I really enjoy how the vines and everything look. I gave them a gloss varnish right at the end to add a bit more sort of eeriness to them, but I'm really happy with how it looks. The footsteps that I molded into the basing there looks surprisingly better. I'm not a sculptor myself. I'm working on that for myself there. But once I finished it, I was really happy with how it looked, and I'm really hoping my girlfriend's going to enjoy it. Of course, this is a fairly shorter video compared to what I did last time. However, I appreciate everyone who does watch. I'm trying to sort of get used to editing on YouTube and bringing myself out and doing more long-form content. I have learnt a lot doing editing this video, and this audio that I'm recording right now has been a pain in the arse. I'm not very good at it, and I hope I'm going to get better. But thanks for watching the video. If you got this far, thanks for watching through to the end, and subscribe for more. I'm going to try and put out as much content as I can, but it's going to be quite slow just because of how much of an amateur editor I am. I'm much better at the painting side of things, but filming and stuff, it's all going to get there. I've got a new camera angle from above that I'm looking forward to trying out, which I'm quite happy with. You know, the standard everything cost about 50 quid. So the above camera angle, I'm filming on my iPhone, so it'll all just sort of work into place once I iron out the kinks that I'm finding along the way. It's a learn as you go sort of thing, but I'm happy with how it's turned out. This video's been a lot I've learned a lot in the process, and I think it's going to look a lot better than my previous one, which was a lot more janky, and I'm using a better editing software as well now. But yeah, like and subscribe, of course, as every YouTuber says. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll have another video out in the next sort of 2 weeks' time if my editing gets better and I don't put it off because it's daunting. But either way, thanks for watching. I'll catch you all in a bit.